Hey everyone, WoW Classic fresh servers are right around the corner, coming this week on November 21st. I sat down, took a look back on my journey through the first iteration of WoW Classic starting in 2019, and I came up with 10 mistakes that I made the first go around in WoW Classic that I will not be making this time in fresh WoW Classic. Mistake number one that I will be avoiding doing this time around is getting caught up in the leveling rush of a fresh launch. When WoW Classic first dropped in 2019, I was all about the hype, and when it actually officially dropped and the realms went live, I went insane. I was freaking out trying to keep up with everybody. There was people everywhere, and I felt like I had to play 25 hours a day or I was falling behind. I felt that way because I thought I would never get that experience again, which has kind of turned out to be true, but thankfully we've got these fresh servers coming to kind of recreate it a little bit. I even had a best friend who was playing with me at the time who wouldn't even respond to text messages because he was too busy trying to speed level to level 10 as fast as possible. Looking back, all of that was a little bit silly. Even when you take it a step further, like a week later, I was just spamming runs in Scarlet Monastery because it was the fastest way to level, and that's what everybody is doing. And all that's to say now, 5 years later, I wish I had taken it a lot slower. I wish I had gone out and quested more. I wish I would have worked on my fishing and cooking just for a break in between grinding quests. I wish I would have enjoyed the process more, which is really what vanilla leveling is all about in the first place. And so this time around, my goal is to take it slow, especially in the first few weeks, especially with leveling my first character. Blizzard is actually helping us out a lot here because they're gating the first raid. Like, MC doesn't come out for a certain amount of weeks after the servers come out, so that's definitely helpful in the FOMO aspect. But this time around, I'm going to take my time, work on my professions, and really just try to take it all in a bit more this time around. Mistake number two that I'm going to avoid in the fresh WoW Classic release is leveling the way I've always leveled, especially with classes I've played a ton. I've played a lot of WoW over the years and a ton of WoW Classic over the last 5 years. My number one class is Shaman. That's my favorite class in the game. It always has been. I even went a little crazy with it, and by the end of Wrath of the Lich King Classic, I had 5 different Shaman leveled to level 80, which I know is ridiculous. And of course, I do plan on leveling a Shaman in fresh WoW Classic as well, just because the experience is so good for me. However, I am going to force myself to have sort of a new experience, and that's something I would encourage you all to do as well if you're WoW Classic veterans at this point. Enhancement Shaman is my favorite spec of Shaman, and it's how I've always leveled in vanilla WoW, but this time around I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go Elemental and possibly even Restoration while leveling at times and just spam dungeons and meet people. I want to have a new experience even if it is still in the comfort zone of my favorite class. And so this time around, I'm not just going to be throwing talents in what I know is the most efficient enhancement leveling tree route. And this is also going to synergize really well with me kind of taking it slower in the beginning. Bottom line is I've played a lot of WoW Classic and a lot of WoW, and I really want to make sure this fresh launch is fresh for me. And so I'm just going to mix it up a bit with how I'm leveling. If you're a rogue main and you've played a ton of vanilla rogue, maybe you level as subtlety instead of combat this time. If you're a big druid person and you always level as feral, maybe this time you try a balanced druid route. And obviously a lot of this gets a lot easier when you take out the fear of missing out and the initial launch rush, which I'm trying to do. The third mistake I'm going to avoid this time around with WoW Classic Fresh is actually a really important one for me. It's hoarding gold. So throughout WoW Classic, I was definitely into farming gold a ton, and I never really spent that gold because I always felt like I needed it for the future. Running GDKPs with friends sometimes definitely didn't help that mindset, especially in TBC and Wrath, because I felt like I needed a boatload of gold in the bank in the first place to even be able to buy stuff in these runs. Obviously, GDKP is banned this time around in WoW Classic, so it's a non-issue, but all this hoarding of gold over time, all this farming of gold over time and not spending it, eventually just led me to a dead end where now I have all this gold on Cataclysm Classic, and I don't even know how much Cataclysm or Miss of Pandaria I'm gonna even be playing. Like, all this gold I have banked on Cataclysm now, I can basically either turn it into WoW tokens or save it and hope I spend it and miss somehow. Looking back, I could have spent that gold on epic flying sooner. I could have spent it on an epic mount in vanilla sooner. I could have bought that BOE that I wanted right away instead of justifying it by saying it'll be cheaper in a month. So this time around, unironically, I'm gonna try to be as broke as possible. I'm really gonna try to live in the moment because hoarding gold through the first iteration of WoW Classic over the last 5 years really ended up getting me nowhere in the end. And now that I know that, I'm going to try to spend my gold on things that bring me enjoyment in the current patch. That's not to say that saving gold at times still isn't a good thing to do, or that I'm not gonna do it. For example, moving into TBC, it would be nice to have some gold saved to be working towards my flying mount skill, but I'm gonna make sure it's with purpose and that I'm not just farming gold and saving gold just because. The fourth mistake I'm going to avoid making in WoW Classic this time around is playing a ton of alts and basically trying every class and spec. I'll be honest, a little bit of this is not by choice. I have significantly less time to play WoW Classic than I did through 2019, 2020, 2021. But the first time through, I wanted to try everything. One of my #1 goals was to get every class leveled to max level. I ended up doing that and then some. At this point, I almost have one of every class at max level in Cataclysm on both factions, which is completely overboard and unnecessary, and I wish I wouldn't have done it. So this time around, I'm going to be picking a main, really doing everything I can on that main. That includes little stuff like secondary professions, and I'm really going to try to stick to just a few alts, maybe even just one alt in vanilla itself. When we move on to TBC and Wrath, hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to kind of spin new characters up, but overall, I'm just going to try to play a lot less classes in general and a lot less alts. This is also made a lot easier for me at this point too, because now I have tried everything and I know what I really don't like. I pretty much know for sure what classes I have no interest in playing from start to finish in the vanilla TBC and Wrath trilogy. For example, and this is no offense to you if these are your favorite classes, but the caster DPS cloth playstyle is just probably my least favorite playstyle in this trilogy. I don't find the gameplay fun in raids, and that's really the #1 thing I like to do at in-game and PvE. And so right off the rip, I know I'm not going to be touching Major Warlock like at all in Fresh WoW Classic for the entire time. That's a big shift for me from 2019 launch and beyond, because I really wanted to have every class just because. Even to this day, I have a max level mage and a max level warlock that I don't even play and have hardly even played the entire time. I literally just did it to check that box off. This time around, not even gonna bother, not even gonna create a mage, not even gonna play a mage one time, because I know I don't like it, and I'm gonna really invest my time into the characters that I know that I like now. The fifth mistake I'm going to avoid this time around in WoW Classic is raiding in Pugs a lot, or maybe even at all, and also I'm gonna try to raid a lot less in general. Obviously, not having as many alts and having GDKP banned is gonna make it a lot easier to not raid all the time. There were definitely times for the first WoW Classic where I was probably raiding too much. It was probably a little bit unhealthy, and so I'm really going to try to scale that back a lot this time around. And another thing that's really going to help me here is just mostly avoiding raiding in Pugs at all. The benefits of this are going to be twofold for me. So one, I don't waste as much time in Pug raids. I have wasted so many hours over the last 5 years just sticking around in terrible Pug raids, hoping for one upgrade that probably doesn't even drop. You know the feeling when you're 2 hours into a raid and you're like 2 bosses away from the item that you have an SR on and you don't want to leave, but it's kind of falling apart, but you've just already been here for 2 hours. That has happened to me more times than I can count, and it's really an experience I want to try to cut out from my experience this time around. All that time spent wasting time in Pug raids could have been spent on leveling another character, working on my professions, doing something other than playing WoW. And this leads to the second benefit that's really going to help me this time around is I'm going to make an effort to be more social while I'm leveling and really meet more people and try to find more good guilds. I definitely have a tendency to kind of be a loner when I'm leveling up because I like, you know, just chilling out, grinding mobs, you know, working on quests, weaving my way through the zones. It definitely means I met less people in the first iteration of WoW Classic, and ironically, when I started being way more social in TBC, that's when I started making a lot more friends, and some of those friends I'm even going to be playing with in this new fresh WoW Classic. And so that really put into perspective, you know, maybe leveling solo, grinding mobs, even though it's efficient at times and it's chill at times, maybe I should make a more concerted effort to run more dungeons, meet more people, try to join more guilds early on in the WoW Classic experience. And by doing that, hopefully I make enough friends to, you know, run dungeon groups consistently. I find some guilds that I can get raids with consistently, and I don't even have to worry about the Pug raiding scene at all, which I think is the best way to play WoW. Like, I think it's kind of unspoken that the best way to play WoW, or you'll have the best experiences in WoW, is if you're in a good guild. The problem for me has just been getting there in the first place, but definitely going to try to make an effort to get there this time, and going to try to avoid the mistake of doing a lot of Pug raiding and a lot of raiding in general. Mistake number 6 that I'm going to avoid for fresh WoW Classic is maybe a controversial one. I'm going to completely avoid playing on a PvP server if I can help it. There is one exception. I have friends that are going to be going Horde PvP, so I'm going to roll exactly one Shaman character to play with them, but all of my other characters will be PvE server for sure. They might even be like, I'll try them on hardcore and then just transfer afterwards. I definitely love the idea of World PvP, and I have a lot of great memories of World PvP, specifically like older WoW, like the original version of TBC or the original version of Vanilla. A lot better World PvP perspective and memories from me there, but where I'm at in my life right now, I just don't want to deal with the BS of a PvP server. I'm gonna be honest. You can say whatever you want about that. When I have time to play WoW, I want to sit down and play WoW and accomplish things and do what I set out to do and meet people and level up and get experience or get skill professions. I don't want to log in at 8 p.m. knowing I have to get off at 10 p.m. and spend 8 to 9:30 p.m. just corpse running because a level 60 is killing me in Stranglethorn Vale over and over. I know that's like a core experience of WoW, and a lot of people think that's crucial to like having fun, I guess, but I'm at the point where I'm just over it, and I have the option to just not even deal with it on a PvE server, so that's what I'm gonna do. Also, as I said earlier, I'm going to be leveling a lot slower in vanilla this time around and intentionally taking my time, and falling behind in that way on a PvP server just doesn't lead to a lot of good things happening. So mistake number 6 I'm going to avoid is rolling on a PvP server. Mistake number 7 I'm avoiding for the WoW Classic Fresh is playing on only one faction, especially vanilla raiding. So the first time around in 2019 I actually only played Horde. I've never raided as Alliance in vanilla, if you can believe it. Again, that was because Shaman is my favorite class, so of course I had to go Horde. But this time around, instead of, you know, rolling Horde and having a Shaman plus 5 alts, this time I'm just gonna do a Shaman on Horde and then a Paladin on Alliance. I really want to enjoy the leveling experience as Alliance. I have done it like in hardcore and stuff, but I haven't done it on a fresh WoW Classic launch scenario like this. And like I said, I also have never raided in vanilla on Alliance, so the thought of raiding as a vanilla Alliance Paladin sounds really fun. I know Paladin raiding is kind of meh in vanilla, but it's what I want to do, and hopefully experiencing things from both factions' perspectives this time, especially in vanilla raiding where like factions have different things that are good, that are unique to them, like totems for Horde or blessings for Alliance. Just giving myself more experiences in that fashion, and also, again, diversifying my social aspect of the game. I'll be able to meet, you know, theoretically twice as many people by playing on both factions at the same time, as opposed to playing a Shaman on Horde and then a Priest alt on Horde. So this time around, I'm going to be playing on both factions and hopefully experiencing the entire raiding scene on both factions on my main as well. The 8th mistake I'm going to be avoiding making for fresh WoW Classic launch is choosing minor min-max benefits over aesthetics or general enjoyment, and this really applies to like racials and professions specifically. I don't plan on playing Warrior at all this time around, but just as an example, in vanilla, it's pretty much common knowledge if you're playing Alliance that like human warrior is the way to go absolutely in PvE. I'm taking it a completely step further this time around for me, where if I was interested in playing warrior, I might not even roll human. If human happens to be the race that I want to play for warrior, then great, but if I wanted to play a different race for warrior that gave me more enjoyment in terms of aesthetics and animations and things like that, I would be doing that. Shaman, which is my main, actually has pretty good racials all the way around in vanilla. I think Tauren is like the worst one, and I'm gonna be rolling troll because that is the race that I want to play, and it's my favorite race for Shaman, and the troll racial is pretty good, so that's a nice bonus. But as an example, if Tauren Shaman was what really got me going as far as like how the gear looks on my character, or how I like the way that they run, or their animations, their melee swing, stuff like that, that's the way I would be doing it this time, as opposed to just picking the race that gives me the most PvE benefit. I'll be blunt, I'm not good enough at the game in raiding scenarios to like parse 99s most of the time, so really these min-max benefits didn't even really help me that much. Like, it would probably bring my parse from like an 80 to an 85 most times, and at this point that's just completely not worth it to me. So I'm going to be playing whatever race I think is awesome on the classes that I'm going to be playing this time, as opposed to what's necessarily good. Same goes with professions, although I generally find engineering extremely fun, and engineering is the best vanilla profession, so I'm going to be going engineering anyways. But if I ever end up in a situation in like TBC or Wrath where I'm running a profession just because it's the best, but I'm not really enjoying it, I'll probably walk away from that situation as well. Alright, and the last two mistakes I'm going to be avoiding for WoW Classic Fresh Launch are kind of related. Number 9 is I'm going to avoid spending the last patch of each expansion prepping for the next expansion. Caring about gold and gold income a lot less I think is going to help me a ton here. But almost every single time when a new expansion came out in original WoW Classic, so when TBC was announced to be coming out, when Wrath was announced to be coming out, when we were in the last patch of vanilla, I was doing nothing but TBC prep. I need to farm gold for TBC. I need to get my alts up for TBC. I need to have a bank full of, you know, mats that will get my profession from 300 to 320 immediately, stuff like that. Doing stuff like that, you know, did help me in TBC, but not to the degree that the time investment initially, you know, required. And looking back, I think last patch is one of my favorite times of all these expansions. You know, the next Ramus in vanilla is so much fun. Sunwell is my favorite raid of all time, but I was only raiding Sunwell on one character, one because it was hard and it took a long time to clear, but also because I was spending all of my other time in the game doing stuff prepping for Wrath. I was leveling characters for Wrath in the Sunwell patch. I was getting professions ready for Wrath in the Sunwell patch. I was making sure my alts were the appropriate level and had tailoring so that I could just use them for alchemy cooldowns or tailoring cooldowns in the next expansion. All of that looking back was just like so pointless. I wish I would have lived in the moment in the last patch a lot more and just enjoyed the expansion that we were in at the time instead of trying to prep for the next one. And that leads me straight into the last mistake that I'm not gonna make this time around in WoW Classic, is looking ahead instead of enjoying the moment. So this is the most broad one. Pretty much all of the first 9 have kind of led to this, and maybe this is too much of like a serious mindset to have for like a video game that we're trying to be enjoying a lot. But really in WoW Classic, the first time around, I felt like I was always looking ahead at all times. I need to level fast so I can get my Prebis fast, so that I can get into MC fast, so that I can get into Blackwing Lair fast, so that I can get into AQ fast, so that I can get into Nax fast. Well, I can't really raid Nax that much because I need to get ready for TBC, so I need to level my alts up. Then TBC comes out, I need to get my reputations up. These are all things that are fun to do in a vacuum, and honestly, they were fun for me to do the first time around, and I imagine a lot of you will have fun doing this exact thing this time around. But for me personally, I'm really going to try to live in the current time, in the current patch as much as I possibly can. After TBC Classic, the first time moved on to Wrath Classic, and I really started missing TBC and realizing that TBC was my favorite expansion and realizing that Sunwell was my favorite raid. All this kind of clicked into perspective. It's pretty likely that we'll have repeated fresh launches over time, so this isn't as serious, I guess, under this context now, but it really made me realize that like each time that we have in each patch is like really limited, and I haven't been enjoying it as much as I should have because I was always looking forward to the next thing. This would even go so far as to doing things like stopping raiding or taking a few weeks off raiding in the last patch because there wasn't really a lot of gear that was an upgrade for me at that point. I'm sure you guys get the point at this point, but yeah, definitely going to try to live in the moment and take things a lot slower and not look ahead as much this time around in WoW Classic Fresh. Thank you all so much for watching. I'd love to hear in the comments what your plans are for Classic Fresh. If you have any mistakes that you realize you made the first time around that you're going to be trying to avoid this time around, I'm sure there's a ton that I missed. I really would love to hear them from you all, and I hope you're getting as excited as I am. We really get to play WoW Classic as a re-release again. It's crazy. It's going to be so much fun. Cannot wait for November 21st. I hope to see you there. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next video.